What's going on, everyone? It's another episode of the WVSports.com podcast. I'm Wesley Shoemaker, joined by, as always, the one and only Keenan Cummings. Mountaineers had a hard-fought game against the Memphis Tigers in the Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl on Tuesday night, turning into early Wednesday morning, but they ultimately fell 42 to 37 as they just couldn't really climb out of a 17-point hole early or an 18-point hole there in the third quarter, but showed some serious fight throughout. So, Keenan, just your overall takeaways from what is the final game, technically, of one, Neil Brown era, and two, the 2024 season for West Virginia.
I don't want to say fitting because I think that this team battled, and I know that's cliche at this point. A lot of people don't want to hear that, but they fought and they put a lot of effort out there. But almost poetic in a sense that it ends kind of the way this entire season has gone for West Virginia. Frustrating in a lot of senses. West Virginia had chances in this game. It was high scoring. We were close with our scoring predictions. Close. But they couldn't make enough plays complementary wise on both sides of the ball at any point to really get over the top. They fell behind 17 to nothing early, got some momentum, got back in the game, and then gave up a huge play. I thought it was a well-designed play on that 89-yard pass by Memphis. They had really been setting that up all game and got West Virginia on that kind of with a fake screen and a fake, and they down the field. But then they go down and get inside the 15 and burn almost 3 minutes off the clock, come back to bite them. West Virginia had a chance with 51 seconds left to win this football game. Moved the ball really effective, really efficiently the first couple plays. Garrett took off on a slide. He was a yard short. And then it was kind of a scramble mode for West Virginia, and it all went downhill from there, led to an interception. And I think that, some people are going to point to that sequence, but West Virginia is not in that position without Garrett Greene. I thought he played pretty well in this game. Outside the start of this, threw for a career high, 328-yard passing, 2 touchdowns, ran for almost 100 more in a touchdown. They're not in this game without him. And Hudson Clement also had a career game with 11 catches. That's a high for him. Had 166 yards, 2 touchdowns. There's one he'd want back, but there's a lot of plays in the football game that you probably want one of them back. But hard to complain with what he did. C.J. Donaldson's effort in the second half was pretty incredible, considering that he was the only guy for West Virginia in the backfield. So there were positives, but again, the ultimate result is West Virginia lost the football game, and it kind of speaks to the last 6 years in general. If the best thing you can say is they fought hard, there's some issues there, and I think that obviously West Virginia has gone about correcting some of those with the coaching change, but I think it was the way the whole thing unfolded was unfortunate because I thought this team really came out and battled and gave themselves a chance, but the end result is kind of why this team is setting at 6-7. 13 games into a season that began with so much promise, kind of a frustrating end to a frustrating season, and for the better part of a frustrating era for West Virginia football.
I think you said that pretty well, Kino. I think that Garrett played pretty well. I mean, early on, it was more just, I would say, the run game just not getting going more than anything. They struggled to run the ball, and then the fumble hurt them. I mean, CJ fumbled, really hasn't had a fumble issue at all in his 3 years, I would say. And then he fumbles twice in 4 possessions. Like, that was a little uncharacteristic. I know Memphis came into this game and they forced a lot of fumbles this season, but that was a little uncharacteristic of CJ. And then Jaheim goes down in late there in the second quarter, and then it's just the CJ show from there in the backfield, and he played really well. I mean, that last touchdown run he had where it looked like he was stood up and he just fights, fights, fights. That was big time. Garrett was big time. The long touchdown run, and then just kind of delivering throws. I mean, he was pretty efficient through the air, especially in that third quarter. And they went on some serious drives there. That offense did. They marched the ball down the field, and then you just got the feeling after Memphis missed that field goal, like, wow, they're going to have a real shot to win this. And it's unfortunate that it ended the way it did. It would have been cool probably for all those guys to end on a high note, but I was impressed with Chad Scott's play calling and in-game adjustments for his first time. I think clock management is something we could definitely nitpick from his first go round as a head coach here, especially late in that game. I know you and I talked a little bit about it of when do you burn the timeouts, when do you do this, when do you do that. It ended up not being the worst thing in the world, but I feel like he could have probably played that a little better. Also, the timeout usage towards the end of the first half was a little bit confusing as well. Just because you ended up going to the locker room with one and you had to settle for a field goal when it seemed like you needed to kind of match score for score at that point. But as a whole kind of overarching view, I think you nail it in a sense of what did we say for the majority of these games this year? It was a coin flip game, and it kind of came down to that. It was a coin flip at the end of there. It was who's going to get the ball last and who's going to make a play. We don't know because we really can't tell which defense is going to get a stop right now. And it was the Memphis defense that ended up making a play. I'm not sure how you review it truthfully, and decide that there was an intent to slide there. I mean, I get he was kind of going down, but to me, that should have been West Virginia ball with 8 seconds left. Do I think they score? No, not really. But it would have been kind of fitting for how that fourth quarter unraveled as a whole. But yeah, just so close, but yet so far. I think is a good way to put it. Of it seemed like they were so close to getting back into this thing, and then just when you thought they would do it, they couldn't. And that was this season, right? Like going back to the 2 games at home in October, so close. Oh, we're really back into this thing. No, you're not. And then that's kind of the Neil Brown era as a whole. Of you think you're there, you think you're kind of getting over the mountaintop, the climb is there, you're at the top, and then you just fall right back down. And so that's where I'm at with this game, with this team, with this season, is that they were close, but they couldn't get the job done. And I feel like that's been the somewhat general storyline for the last 5, 6 years.
Yeah, and this season ends, and I know that Neil Brown's no longer the head coach, but you put a bow tie on his era. 37 and 36 overall. West Virginia didn't beat a ranked team this year. We all know the numbers by now. I mean, it was disappointing. I think if I had one complaint with this game, and me and you were talking a little bit, between each other, early in this game, I thought that, I came into this game and I said that West Virginia needed to be able to challenge Memphis vertically down the field. They struggled in pass coverage. I thought they were much too conservative. And credit to Chad Scott, he placed the blame right at his feet. He was too conservative to start this game. I think once they opened it up, got some tempo going, they were able to run the ball more effectively because it was spread a little bit. And then they were able to throw the ball pretty much at will on this Memphis defense. You look at the numbers, Wes,
The
and it's
numbers
just,
are crazy.
West Virginia threw for had 534 yards, 328 passing yards, 200 rushing yards. They had 25 first downs and averaged 7 yards of play and lost this football game. He had a time of possession advantage by almost 7 or over 7 minutes. They did the things you needed to do to win in a lot of areas, and it still wasn't good enough. And that kind of goes back to what I was talking about with complementary football. I thought the defense, for the most part, played better in the second half, but that's more of a sign of how poorly they played in the first. I do credit Memphis. I said earlier, I thought that play design on the one they hit was really well. They kind of looked like they had been setting something like that up all game with a lot of their screen game, and they caught
I
West
really like
Virginia.
their first touchdown play design too, where they kind of looked like it was going to spread everything to the right with the three receivers and that little shovel pass. That was nifty as well.
Yeah, they had some good things. I thought that they got a little too cute at times, and it almost bit them, but they made enough plays to win the game. And I think that the thing that West Virginia's defense, at some point, West Virginia needed a DB to make a play, and it just didn't happen. A lot of those plays were just dropped back, and they got pressure in his face a few times and just lofted up down the field, 40-yard catch, 35-yard catch, and some of those on third downs. Just think how different this game might have been had West Virginia forced more than 2 punts. I really did feel that if West Virginia got a stop at the end of the game, that they were probably going to win the football game, and it was setting up that way. The drive started, it looked beautiful. They executed it right down the field, and then things kind of went haywire there, with no timeouts, and that happens. But I do think that when you think back to the season, when you think back to the career of Garrett Greene, it deserves to be said, he wasn't perfect, but he played hard and he represented West Virginia well. And I think he did in this game. And that might get lost in translation with how frustrated and upset that people have been, for the better part of this year. But he almost willed this team to a victory today. I mean, he really did. And I think that speaks to him when he wasn't getting a lot of help at times. And he made some plays. And I know, obviously, the slide's going to be something people talk about, but it happens. It's football. It's a lot different in live action than it is watching it on TV.
Yeah, going back to your stats, I know someone on the board brought this up. When's the last time West Virginia threw for 300 and ran for 200 and lost? And I looked it up. They've done that 26 times. They've passed for at least 300 yards and ran for at least 200 in a game. 21-5 now, in the first time since 2017 in that Virginia Tech game that they've lost. So, kind of a little bit of an oddity there. And then going to Garrett. I mean, I know there's been a lot of kind of hate given towards him just based off how the season's gone, how the results have played out. But I know I mentioned this on the board is that in an age of college athletics where everyone's moving and everything seems so transactional and fans are kind of begging for players to stay at one place and develop and stay true, especially at a place like West Virginia where they take so much pride in having these players that stay with them for 4 or 5 years and are theirs. Garrett's done that. And so I think it goes it's a little odd to me to see people and fans go after him, especially after all he's given and the sacrifice he's made when he's had so many opportunities to leave. I mean, in those Daggy years, it feels like everyone was asking for Garrett Greene to play, right? And then when he does play and yeah, he messes up, and then they're just gunning for him to be replaced by Nico. And so I think you guys have to show Garrett a little grace and his legacy might not be remembered by the wins and losses, but I think his toughness, the way he represented West Virginia, the way he cared about West Virginia as a kid from Florida, right? That's rare to him. He truly got it. And I think that's what so many fans wish. And I think that's what fans hope, like understand about Rich Rod as he gets the state. I think Garrett Greene got the state and the mentality of it. And he tried to show out for them every time he could. And just because he couldn't get it done, I'm not sure he deserves as much disrespect as I feel like he's getting.
Yeah, and people are going to be people, on Twitter and everything else. It happens. I understand it. Fans get frustrated. I think when people take, some time and look back at this, you'll see a lot of those same feelings. You could see the raw emotion, in his post game comments. It means a lot to him. And
He's an emotional guy in general, but I've never seen him with like he was wiping away tears answering every question, and that was
yeah,
tough to see.
yeah, there's no question there. I think that to put a bow on this thing, it's late. I don't even want to tell you how late it is right now.
3:10 a.m. for anyone
Oh
who cares.
gosh, but yeah. So
Peter's coffee, Keenan. Come on.
maybe we should have invested more.
Yeah,
They did send me a nice care package, by the way, but I'm not really a coffee drinker, so maybe I'll give it to you. But
I don't drink coffee.
well, there you go. Maybe that's our problem.
Yeah,
But there's no sugarcoating it. It's a disappointing season. Obviously West Virginia recognized that they're moving on, and now comes the next question, the next batch of questions, host of questions. How quickly does Rich Rodriguez put his staff together? What happens with the transfer portal? What guys are retained? What guys come in? And we'll be here for it all. We'll have you covered. We'll have a lot of stuff coming in the next couple of days. I do expect some staff movement before too long. So, take a look at the hot board. Vernon's got one up with assistant coaches. He's updating that thing with the latest information. And there we are. I think that's where we're at. West Virginia is now 17-24 in bowl games. Hope that number changes in the future. But another season that ends in, just think where we were last year at this time compared to where we are now, and things can change quickly.
yeah. 6-7 to end 2024. A new head coach after 6 years at the helm, and a offseason that will be full of storylines. And truthfully, the next week will probably be full of storylines with the portal. I mean, the hot stove of the transfer portal is going to seriously heat up for West Virginia. There are going to be a lot of dudes that exit the Mountaineers, A lot of dudes that come in because that's just the way of college football right now. And don't be mistaken, Rich is going to get who he wants in that building, and I'm not sure he's going to wait around either. And that goes for staff members, that goes for players, that goes for everyone involved. And we'll be watching, we'll be waiting, since just like I know all these fans will be, and we'll be on top of it as we always try to be. So that'll do it for this episode of the WestVirginiaSports.com podcast. Head over to our website, westvirginia.rivals.com, or just type in WVSports.com to get all the latest information. There should be some level of deal going on still, I believe. I think it's still spring. So I think we remind you of that every time, but go take advantage of that if you want to get to chatting. Basketball has one more non conference game, and then they get into Big 12 play, so we'll be on top of that as well. But until next time, I'm Wesley Shoemaker, joined by Keenan Cummings, and this was another episode of the WVSports.com podcast.